1.0. Is this the beginning for Last Epoch or the beginning of the end? Is this Wilson 2.0? Hello and welcome. This is my review of Last Epoch 1.0. Now let's get a few things out for anyone who doesn't know me. I've been playing this game for about 4 years now. To say I am biased would be probably a bit of an understatement. I obviously have believed in this game long enough to play it that much and get 5,000 plus hours into the game. With that being said, I've also been a pretty big critic of a lot of things about the game in the past, and I'm going to maintain that by giving you both the things I really like about 1.0 and the things that I don't like so much about 1.0. You're going to get as honest and unbiased of a review as I possibly can do while clearly being a fan of this game. So we're going to go through a number of different factors, things that I have tested on the CT, the community tester build, over the last several months, and combine that with what we already know about the game to come up with like a review of where the game is going to be on launch on the 21st. So the first thing that I want to talk about is graphics. Now, graphics is a topic that has been fairly hot lately with Last Epoch because it's comparing to Diablo 4 and then, the PoE 2 stuff. And there's a lot of people that don't think it's really standing up to that. So here's what I have to say about that. Let's talk about the different individual things that I've noticed on the CT that are substantially changed or improved. First off is the lighting. Most people already know that the lighting in this game has gotten significantly better going into 1.0, and that's very true. It's very, very noticeable when you play CT that everything just looks so much better with lighting. It's actually kind of crazy how much of a difference just that one thing has made. I think people are going to be really happy with that. However, there are other things that have also made a big difference, like there are new models. You've probably seen some of the new models of some of the enemies, and also some of the new armor that was shown recently by EHG. That stuff all does look really good, but there's a lot more of it in the game than what you've seen. There's quite a few changes to models, and I do think they make a big difference in a lot of cases. Basically, all of the old models that they had kind of started with, that they hadn't made in-house, they're all gone. This is all fresh stuff that they have made that fits their ideal of what they want the game to look like, and it makes a big difference. Speaking of things that fit their ideal, and also things that were criticized, animations in this game have been criticized quite a bit. Not that they're terrible, but they don't live up to Diablo 4. That's true. A lot of animations have been improved. It's not perfect. There are still a lot of things I think they can improve upon, but I think people will find animations to be a lot better. The one that stands out to me the most is actually the running animation for the rogue. I think the new one is amazing. It fits a rogue so well. It just looks so good. I love it. I think it's an incredible improvement over the old one. They have also added, and you've seen a little bit of this, but not all that much, weather effects. And they look great. The rain, the storming, they just look really, really good, especially when you combine them with the lighting. They do make a big difference. And finally, the thing I want to talk about a little bit are they've added a bunch of new areas, and these areas are pretty high quality compared to some of the old ones, with a lot of different colorization effects, a lot brighter colors in certain areas that really pop. I think they've done a great job with the new areas. All of the things together graphically, I think, are going to bring this up to the next level. I still don't think most people will consider it on the level of Diablo 4, but I don't think it's going to be criticized nearly as much as being that far below Diablo 4, especially when you consider how much brighter the colors are and how many people prefer a more colorful game compared to what's kind of more bleak and grayed out with Diablo 4. I think the game now is at least somewhat competitive with it in that area, and if they continue to improve this, it's going to be great. Let's move on now to mastery classes. So Warlock and Falconer. These are the two new mastery classes that were added, and I've tested both of them. I've tested Falconer a lot more than Warlock. I have tested Warlock, but I tested it when it first was given to us, And that build no longer exists, and those characters no longer exist, so I don't even have any footage of it to offer you all, unfortunately. I'm making a Falconer build myself and playing Falconer, so that's what I know the best. What I will say about the Warlock is it's a dot-based build, which is why I don't like it as much, their playstyle. It can do other things, but it's significantly more dot-focused. It's also really colorful and flashy, and I do like that part. I think it's a really pretty, weirdly enough, for a Warlock, it's a really pretty mastery, which you might not expect as a dark art Warlock type thing, but the way they've handled like the fire and the necrotic and putting them together, I think it looks awesome. I think people are really gonna, if you like flashy playstyles, Warlock's up your alley. Now, if you like something a little different, unique, having a pet that can't die, that can also pick you up and fly with you, I mean, how do you not like the Falconer? It's just so good, and all the skills are so well done. There's going to be a lot of really OP stuff in that one. Like, there's going to be a lot of OP, super overpowered stuff. In really both of them, Warlock's going to have it too. The mastery classes are pretty heavily tuned high. This is not unusual for games that create new classes or for EHG. You're better off to tune it high initially so that people really could get to enjoy it than to under-tune it and make it frustrating for players trying the new thing and that want to be really good. So I'm not too upset about this, but I think you're going to find some legitimately game-breaking stuff out there, and then they're going to have to bring it back, reel it back in, and take care of it and make it more balanced. But that's okay. I think people are going to really love the mastery classes. I think they're going to live up to the expectation and the hype on those. People are going to find them to be a lot of fun. Speaking of which, and related but not fully related, let's talk about 3 builds that I love, which are the ones that you're seeing right now on screen that I'm cycling between. So, Shadow Dagger Falconer, that's my starter. Love it. I like it almost as much as Blade Dancer right now, and I might like it as much once I've played it enough. I just love getting picked up by the Falcon and dropped off while also murdering everything with a bunch of Umbra Blades that turn to Shadow Daggers and explosions. It's just so much fun, and it's just so satisfying. So this is a build that, yeah, I definitely fell in love with it as soon as I started it. It's not surprising that I like a Shadow Dagger build, but there's a lot of other features in here that also clicked with me, and it just turned into like I've got to play this. The other 2 builds that I've really enjoyed that I won't be making build guides on, at least initially, are, believe it or not, Tempest Strike. I love the new Tempest Strike, especially as a melee ability or a melee build. It is so much fun. It is very strong. It is a great single target killer, and like the amount of attack speed you can get is incredible. I really love Tempest Strike now, and I think people are going to make some really sick builds with it, and I think there's a lot of diversity with it too that's going to be explored. There's a number, we have one build that's going to take advantage of some of the things that Tempest Strike can do, but I think there's a lot more there than what we're going to put on max roll to begin with for people to explore. And I think it's going to get a lot of praise for being just so much better than the old one. The other one that I've really enjoyed is Healing Hands, especially as a proc-based damager, and combining it with Vengeance is possibly going to be my number 2 build. It might actually be Tempest Strike as well. These 2 might be my second build that I play after I play Shadow Dagger's Blade Dancer. Haven't decided, but I'm really kind of leaning towards one of these 2. And I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards the Vengeance Healing Hands setup, because I want to see Vengeance be great again. Vengeance used to be an awesome skill, and then they nerfed it into the ground. But now if you can proc another skill that does all the damage for you, you can get the benefits of Vengeance, which are lots of damage reduction. It's also flashier now because Healing Hands is a really flashy skill. I just had a ton of fun with this, and I think that the changes they made to skills, Healing Hands, Tempest Strike, making just basically, well, giving Healing Hands a new skill tree that didn't have before, and then Tempest Strike giving a brand new one, along with the mastery classes, has brought a lot of diversity to the game that people are going to have a lot of fun exploring. All right, let's move on to factions. I don't have a ton to say about this, but I do want to say a few things as far as like COF versus MG. I did test both. It's hard to test trade in an environment where there's only maybe a few dozen players at any given time playing. There's a lot more CTs than that, but people are all over the world, so there's only so many people playing at any given time. There's only so many things that can be traded. So I didn't get a really good, what's the word I want? Like, the experience is probably not very realistic to what it's going to be. So there's got to be a lot of prediction and understanding that. COF, not so much. COF looks great. The Lenses System Edition was an excellent addition, and I think it's going to make it feel a lot better to kind of customize your experience, a little bit like the Atlas passive tree in PoE, but not as much customization, still like that sort of concept. And the big thing that I think is going to make or break COF is how fun it is to go after the different prophecies, and if there's some really, really powerful ones. They added some more powerful ones later. I didn't get a ton of chance to actually experiment with those, but I think that's going to make it a lot better, and we'll have to see how that plays out as far as like the really top-end stuff you might be able to do with a prophecy system. But I think COF overall is going to be a hit. It's something that you get to do as a non-trader to juice things up. I think it's going to be an improvement over effectively having nothing as a non-trader. As far as trade goes, I think the system is really cool. I think it's going to generally be well received. I do worry that there's going to be a what I want to use as a word here, like a bottleneck, where casual players aren't going to progress through their ranks fast enough to get to buy the really cool shit that they want, and they're going to get frustrated. This is a sentiment I've heard from some others as well. It's gotten way better since we started. A lot of feedback went to EHG, and they've changed a lot about it, and all for the better, especially the ability to trade from rank 1 right now. That's a huge buff from where we were before. I still worry that they're being too conservative on the faction rep grind, and it's like you're not going to be able to trade LPs items or trade for or buy them until after level 100. But level 100 is aspirational. So why is trading items locked behind aspirational content? I don't really get that, and I'm a little concerned that because everything falls based on that, the whole curve is based upon getting to that point, that even like just items with legendary potential and exalted items might just be too far away for some players, and they just give up on it. That being said, my overall prediction is it'll be relatively healthy, and most players will be more or less okay with it, and it'll probably get adjusted at some point throughout the first cycle to be a little bit less overbearing at the high end, and then it'll be in a good state. That's what I'm predicting will happen and hoping will. I don't think it's going to be just an absolute train wreck to start with. It'll just feel a little bit too grindy, and then it can be adjusted. All right, I think that's all I wanted to say about factions. So let's move on. There's a number of other things that I want to talk about. Some of them well-known, some of them not so well-known. So let's start with corruption. So this has been a well-known thing that corruption was going to change. The current system of corruption, if you don't know what corruption is, it is the system to juice the endgame Monolith of Fate system by making it harder, but also more rewarding. So enemies get more health and damage, you get more item rarity and XP, and so it is worth juicing it. But traditionally, or historically, that juicing system caused the modifiers that you would pick from different echoes to become far more powerful, and some of them are much more dangerous than others. Like increased damage got insanely high on some of these, versus like critical strike avoidance, which caps at 100. You can't get any worse than that. So you would just take those, and people would cherry pick what they wanted to take so they get to really high corruption levels without adding much difficulty to it. The new system is not going to allow that. It's going to heavily scale that health and damage and not those echo modifiers. So when you are increasing your corruption, you are actually making it significantly harder, and there's not really any way to cherry pick that. This, to me, is across the board a positive change. This is a good thing. It's going to make that corruption grind make more sense. It's going to make it more fair, and you're going to actually have a better sense of like what builds are capable of based upon how far they can go in corruption. I think that's a good thing. Next up, I want to talk about new enemies. You did see some new enemies in the reveal that EHG did for that. There's a lot more enemy changes, new ones or old ones that changed into new things. They are good and sometimes scary and sometimes dangerous, but I think overall they're making the game look a lot more, they're making it look better. This almost fits into the graphics where, you know, the enemy models are much more legit. Like they look scary and they look like something that a higher quality development team is going to put out, which I consider EHG to now be in that category after growing so much, they should be putting out this kind of quality content, and they are. That's a good sign. The new enemies are definitely a win. Campaign difficulty is another interesting thing that has changed that not a lot of people know about. Some people have been hinting about it a little bit. It's a lot harder. For most players, I think it's going to be a lot harder. A lot of people have said that the campaign is too easy. Let's see if you still think that after these changes. Because not only has the campaign become more difficult and some enemies are a lot scarier, but also density has gotten higher, which again, people were asking for. In some areas, it's quite a bit higher and a lot scarier because of it, especially if you've got some telegraphed attack stuff going on. I think overall they did a good job with density. It's in a good state. I think a lot of people are going to really like it. I don't know if the super juicers from PoE are going to find this to be enough to appease them, but I think for the average ARPG player, it's going to be generally in a pretty good state. They're going to like it a lot better. So I think overall, all of these changes are just really solid, and they're going to make the game feel a lot better. However, I do have some concerns. Some of these are going to be easy to answer. Some not so much, might require some extra work. Let's start with endgame. This is already starting to crop up in some circles. It's what I predicted would crop up. People are realizing that the endgame loop, while not bad, is a little on the shallow side once you get to a certain point. There are no pinnacle bosses to kill. There's only so much stuff happening inside of a map, inside of an echo. You know, you've got the mages and you've got the caches, and that's pretty much it, and you should just run to the objective, and that's the end of the story. This is an area that needs to be addressed. It'll be fine for 1.0, but by cycle 2, cycle 3, it needs to be significantly better. The good news is EHG has already said this is their focus for at least the 2 cycles to improve that endgame loop, and so if they nail it in the right ways, it's going to be not a problem very, very quickly, and they won't really have much of an issue here. Here's to hoping that they're right in cycle 1, cycle 2, fix that problem. I think for the average player, it'll be totally fine, by the way. We're talking about people that are going to really grind it, get into empowered stuff and start pushing corruption. That's when that loop becomes basically get more gear to do more corruption, to get more gear to do more corruption. That's where we're going to see some endgame issues, and I do think they'll be fixed eventually, but that some people will notice that in 1.0, it's going to be a talking point. Balance. They were talked a lot about a huge balance patch. There are a lot of things that got balanced, and they made almost no difference. It does feel like they missed on most of the things that were really important, and as for example, our tier list practically didn't move. It practically didn't move. The only movement on it was the new stuff. Most of them didn't really change that much. A few of them like moved 1 tier. It almost didn't move. That's not great. All the OP stuff, for more or less, is still OP. Some stuff got fixed. I'm pretty sure the sacrifice build is not like that anymore. I'm pretty sure that one got fixed. But as far as actual balance stuff, low life meta is low life meta. Didn't change. A few change. Twisted Heart got changed, but overall low life meta is still there. Ward meta is still there. This is an area they need to get better at. You can't have the 1.0 launch have almost no substantive balance changes and no shift in the meta. That's not great. So this is an area where I really think they need to start focusing cycle 1, figuring out how to balance properly in a way that doesn't kill builds, but does bring them back in line, and so they're not like super broken. The trading thing we already talked about. I'll just reiterate again, this is a concern that I have, making sure that that faction rep is not too crazy, so that people don't feel like they're getting shut out of the trading for the best items. And then the big one, multiplayer servers, are they going to hold up? I didn't get to do really any testing on the CT on that other than being online, but I wasn't playing in multiplayer. I've heard kind of a little bit one way, a little bit the other way, whether they were good or not. But of course, there's a lot of changes during CT. They're trying to fix things, so it's hard to really gauge how it's going to be. We're about to find out. Hope to God they hold up. They do really well. EHG seems like they're really confident, so hopefully they're right, and these are great. Overall, I think the game is going to be in a great state for 1.0, as long as those servers do hold. And if the next few cycles significantly improve the end game, I think they're going to be successful long term. That's my overall take on this. I think that 1.0 is going to be a hit as long as the servers don't catch on fire. There will be those negative things that people are going to talk about. That's going to be fine as long as they fix them. This has a really good shot of being super successful long-term game, especially if endgame gets better. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great time in Last Epoch in 1.0 just like me, and I'll see you all again real soon.